Two Iraqis came here to this country, were radicalized.
For that terror attack overseas.
Total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
First of all, we should develop detention centers for them.
Everywhere there is Islam, you'll find women oppressed.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to an episode. A new episode. An episode. We've been gone forever. We've been gone for so long. Imam Azhar was traveling and I was traveling and we've just been gone for so long. But we're back. We're back. We're back. And here we are once again back with Raw Islam on the Venn Network with Imam Azhar. And I think with that, I'm actually, you guys are going to have to give me just a little bit because I'm still working through the remembering of technology and how this works. But I think I'm good here. I think I got it. So back to what I was saying. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with a brand new episode of Raw Islam with Imam Azhar. And ladies and gentlemen, the most traveling Imam that I know, Imam Azhar.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome back, and thank you so much, Carl, for that. Yes, it's been quite a while since we've had our last episode, and we just want to welcome you all back, and we want to thank you for engaging and waiting patiently as we continue our collective journey down this path with Raw Islam with Imam Azhar and Carl. So, Carl, what's happening? How have things been the last few weeks for yourself?
For myself, it has been a very interesting last few weeks. Of course, things at work are getting busy, and we're trying to gear up for the end of the year and winter and things like that. But the flip side to that is I just got back from Cairo, Egypt. I just got back I don't know. I guess there's other Cairos maybe, but definitely I just got back from Cairo, Egypt a few weeks ago, which was interesting because for someone like me, it's interesting to travel to another location like that and to see what life is like and to live in the submersed in that I guess you're gonna say submersed in a Muslim culture, but I don't know if that's an accurate statement or not, because you know, a lot of times you and I talk on this show the difference between Muslim and culture and Muslims. And so, you know, there's a lot of stuff that may not very well be Islamic, but it's a Muslim culture, as it were.
Well, I agree with you because I think we've had that conversation. We had that conversation individually and also collectively here on our podcast in many episodes throughout the many series that we've had thus far. And that is defining what Islam is. And that's the exact purpose of this podcast. Yes, we tend to get carried away with the trends of what's happening and what's hot only because we want to explain the Islamic perspective on certain matters. But I was just the other day contemplating over this the same thought. And what I had wrote on my social media status was, what is Islam? Islam is the Quran. What do you call a person who believes in the Quran? A Muslim. What do you call a person who follows the Quran? A mu'min. A mu'min means a person who is taking it to heart and not just uttered it with their tongue. What is a sign of the Quran inside yourself? The sign is reformation. You're reforming yourself because what the Quran does through introspection allows you to open a path for self-rectification. And what's the outward symbol or sign of the existence of the Quran? And that is character. So when we talk about Muslim culture, Islamic country, Muslim people, we want people to realize that true culture is a culture wherein a person's character is constantly being refined and reformed so that they could stand out as notable citizens in the world that they live in. That's really what Islam is about. Carl, I've been on this journey for myself, trying to dissect 10 and a half years of studying and 14 years of preaching into a concise model to explain to myself, if I took these 700 pages of the Quran and I put it together, what does it want from me? What's the core? When I peel this onion layer by layer, what do I want to hit? And to my understanding thus far in my exploration, it's character. So, I agree with you. It's important that we highlight those things. You, as a convert to Islam who just stated you went to Cairo, and I'm sure this was not your first trip. You've been there before. So it's important for you to present that perspective, especially for our listeners who may seem to get confused by looking at Muslim countries or Muslim people or Muslim culture and thinking, really, what is Islam all about?
And really, it's interesting because you go and there's just things, and you're like, this doesn't seem right, and I don't know why this is a thing, and I don't know why this is here. I don't know why this is happening. And I know you and I had talked a little bit, and I'm gonna veer off because this is a very sensitive touch point for me at the moment, which is just simply that, the Quran and the Prophet, peace be upon him, that made marriage very easy. Very easy. But there are systems in place that man has put there, and it's not easy anymore. I mean, my wife and I have been married in America for, we'll be 10 years in a couple of years. And our marriage, we went to town hall, we got our certificate, we spoke to the imam at the mosque, we got married, he sent the certificate to the town hall, and ta-da! But over there, it was like, because in Cairo, when a woman is married, they put the man's name on her ID, like her driver's license. I don't know why. I'm sure that's a different topic for a different show, whatever. But for the last 9 years, we've been trying to get, my mother-in-law has been trying to get me on that ID. And they just make it so difficult. And this last time, I know I was telling you, because like I said, it's a very sensitive touch point for me. I was telling you that this last time we went and we had everything. We had everything approved, and we had everything stamped, and we had everything translated, and we had everything done, and we went and we said, okay, great, let's move forward. And they said, where's his conversion paperwork? And I looked at the clerk and I said, La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. And the lady goes, no, where's his documentation that he's Muslim? I'm like, I thought only Trump did that, wanting to give the Muslims IDs. Whatever. She said, the mosque is up the street, go get it. So, because mine's dated, like 11, 12 years ago, and it's with the Saudi embassy, I don't carry it on me. Why would I? And so we went down to the mosque, and I went through the process again, brought it back over there, got it certified, got it translated, which I had to get an Arabic document translated for the Arabic country. So yeah, process that for a second. And we handed it to the lady and we said, here's everything. And she looked at my mother-in-law and she says, Astaghfirullah. And I said, what? And she said, this marriage certificate is dated, almost 10 years ago. This conversion paperwork is dated today. You let your daughter marry a non-Muslim. I'm like, really, dude? Really? That's what you're going to do? And they just made it so difficult, and it was so hot, and it was so crowded, and it was so dirty, and everyone was just tired and done, and it was starting to argue, and it was like, y'all have just made this dumb. Because marriage isn't supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be that simple. But okay, that's my rant. I'm done. It's the Imam Azhar show,
Well,
not the Carl
well,
show.
just to top that, it goes to show the reason that we stated what we stated in the beginning of this show, the separation of true Islam from the perceived culture of Islam is because the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said in the hadith that in the Dina Yusr, really this way of life, this Islam is easy. And he said, no one makes it difficult, but it overpowers them. It makes it so complicated that they can't control it. But again, Carl, I want to dive into that topic on another day because there's a lot that we can digest in just that experience alone.
I am so sure that there is so much in there from the IDs right up through everything else. There's just too much there to work with. So yeah, we'll stop there because I'm sure there is a bunch of stuff to talk about.
Well, Carl, it's been many weeks since we've been off the air, and now we're back, and our listeners, I'm sure they're rejoicing in the fact that we're back on our journey. I just want to begin today's segment by thanking every single one of them out there who's listening for their time and cooperation and participation, for their votes. We talked about the nomination for Podcast of the Year, and it took us down a journey where we were selected from amongst many podcasts that were new of the year 2017 to be officially selected and nominated for an award. So that was an honor. And for our listeners, we just want to let you know we did not win the Podcast of the Year for the religious category, but the fact that we got nominated in itself is a tremendous leap forward, especially for a Muslim podcast that's discussing current issues and Islam, and we're inshallah not thinking about stopping anytime soon. We just want to let you know how grateful we are, mashallah, for all of you, and just wanted to thank you off the bat for your generous time to kind of spread the word and submit your vote. So again, for myself and from Carl, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank everybody very, very much for all they did to make sure that we got nominated. And I know you and I have spoken before and on the show and before the show and everything else, that it is a process. And there's the nomination process, and there's the vetting process and the voting process. And I know, I don't think it was in religion, but I don't know officially, so Allahu Alam, I can't comment. But I do know that some podcasts ends up dropping out. They never made it all the way through the end. Mm-hmm. So the fact that we were nominated and we got to the voting process, it says a lot about our audience, and it says a lot about the work we're doing here. And I think the only thing that I would tack on as a thank you that you were saying is it's 2017 too. We didn't just do this now. And it wasn't just because, our listeners, because they're awesome, but we did this in the Trump administration. And I'm just going to say that we did it in the Trump administration. And I'm so thankful to our listeners for making that happen.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's amazing what happens in life that inspires us or that motivates us to do something. And again, we said this in the beginning of our podcast when we began this journey. We had no intent to get on this train and move towards this destination. But again, it came to be, and we're grateful for the opportunity to have a seat on this train. We're grateful for all of you who are on this train with us. And only Allah knows where the destination will take us to, but we're going to continue. This journey is going to go. We'll ultimately understand what the destination is. So, Carl, the job continues. The world doesn't stop, and nor does politics, nor does the turbulent affairs of our world. We're sitting here today, again, just numb to the thought of yet another shooting at an elementary school in California. And this is becoming the norm. And I don't want to talk about that today, but I'm hoping that every podcast, Carl, you and I can ask a simple question to our listeners to see if we get an answer. And the question of today is, where do you feel safe in our world today? And I pose that question because in the history of recent times, there has been shootings in cinema halls. There's been shooting in concerts. There's been shooting in religious institutions, prayer halls, mosques in Montreal, churches in Texas. There has been a shooting at school again today. There's been shootings, not too long ago. Then after that, we've had a person, a maniac, driving through a busy New York area where people bike and killing them using the name Allahu Akbar. And then right after him, maniac driving his car through a Home Depot, Carl, which is down the road from my house. And he drove it through and through. And he was apprehended and caught by a Muslim when he tried to run, only for the police to state he didn't have malicious intent and he will not be charged with terrorism. So again, we got problems. Based on what I just said right now, I don't feel safe at a Home Depot or at a mosque or at a church or at a cinema hall or at a concert, nor at a library, at a school, anywhere. So I want to ask you all, where do you feel safe? Shoot us a quick message. Carl, what is the email address that our listeners need to remember? And you could put that up for them or let them know whenever you're ready. It's not a problem, right? So we want our listeners to engage. Whenever you click onto our podcast, you subscribe to our podcast, it has an email address that you could connect with us. As we said to you in the beginning, we want this to be an engagement. We want this to be something that engages us in dialogue and discussion. We want your questions. We want your feedback. We want your thoughts. We want your concerns. Because if there is no feedback from your side, then we feel that it's a one-way conversation, and truly that's not what we want to have. So Carl, while we're getting that email for them, I just want to relate to everyone an incident that I personally witnessed, and I was part of the last week. And Carl, when we were off the air, there was a tragedy once again in the beautiful city of New York, right, Carl?
Yes. I saw all that, and yes.
So the sad part was an Uzbek Muslim who was once a resident of Tampa, Florida, where I reside, committed an heinous act of terrorism in New York City, in Manhattan. And he was residing in New Jersey at that time with his family when he committed this act. He killed many people. He injured many more. He was arrested, and the police now have him in custody. As soon as this happened, it overshadowed the Las Vegas shooting where hundreds of people were injured and shot at. Over 50 people were killed. And but the fact that it took a twist, and it's not rocket science, Carl, is because there's a Muslim involved. When a person is a Muslim, then it has a whole different twist. And I'm sure every listener who's listening right now, even though you may not agree with the way I see it, is that, okay, a person who commits a crime, being Middle Eastern and Muslim, having a Muslim name, is looked at differently than a person who commits a crime and is not. And why does that happen? Because the definition of terrorism falls under a person who is not just terrorizing the peace of the people, but is someone who's trying to overthrow the government or trying to change the current system in a violent manner. That's kind of like the description of what terrorism entails. But when you look at the white supremacists and people who have malicious intent and they hate the government, they're anti-government and they're pro-guns, and they also want to overthrow, or not overthrow, they want to minimize government, and they want to reduce to zero or nil the effectiveness of government in our country. To me, that's terrorism also, although it's not categorically defined as such. Nevertheless, Carl, that was the week I was going up to New Jersey for my weekly program, and being there became ever more so important. Being from Tampa, going to New Jersey, while the Patterson Mosque was being threatened, 20 minutes away from the Boonton Mosque, where I go periodically and do my monthly programs. So it was a very stressful time. So I want to tell you, Carl, what transpired. So it's like 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and the Jummah prayer starts at 12:45. Are you okay with that? It makes sense? Carl, you want to explain to our listeners what Jummah is quickly, what the Jummah prayer is?
Got to do that. Jumu'ah prayer is the prayer that takes place on Friday when everybody gathers in the mosque and we pray together. Typically what happens is the imam stands up and gives a khutbah or a speech or a little talk or something like that. Sorry. And then we all pray together afterwards. And it's not very long, and it's very good. And if you got the right imam, like Imam Azhar, it's absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you. Sorry about that, Carl. So you're right. It's our weekly service. It's an auspicious day for us of the week. It's the most important day of the week. Just like Saturday is a holy day for the Jews and Sunday is a holy day for the Christians, Friday is a holy day for the Muslims. And we have the Friday prayer, which is, as Carl stated, where a sermon takes place followed by a prayer where everyone comes together and congregates. So I was on my way to lead the prayer in Boonton, New Jersey, which is the next door to Parsippany. And I got out of the shower at 12:10ish. I requested a lift, and lift said 12 to 14 minutes out. And at that time, it's okay, I got enough time to change up, kind of freshen, comb my hair, get my notes, go downstairs, and wait outside the lobby of the hotel. Now, I'm downstairs. It's like 12:22, 12:23, and the Lyft driver hadn't arrived as yet. So I look at the app, and I see that he's like 4 minutes away, but then it turns from 4 minutes to 11 minutes. And I'm like, I know we're like 2 miles away, which is like maybe a 10-minute drive, 8-minute drive, but I don't have time to spare because I needed to start the speech at 12:45. And that 11-minute thing kind of really threw me off. So I quickly called him, as you can, and I said to him, "Where are you?" He said, "You never gave the right address." So looking at the GPS where his car was, I directed him to take a U-turn, not to get back onto the underpass road, just get back up to the top, make a left, go straight, and make a right. And he did that, and I told him in the meantime that I really need to get to the destination by 12:40, and that time was short. And he was hesitant. He's like, "So should I not come?" I said, "No, you have to come." And I actually walked out towards the ramp where the hotel is situated below and the road goes above. So you have to kind of get off on this ramp to come down to the hotel. And so I went close to ramps. As soon as he would enter the ramp, I would kind of jump in to save the time of him stopping, making the U-turn and trying to find his way out. So anyways, he came through. We made eye contact. He slowed down. I opened the back door, and before I could put my second foot into the car, Carl, do you know what he said to me?
I'm kind of scared to assume that my assumption is that he looked at you and was like, "No, I can't make this ride," or something.
Well, you're close, because remember, the New York attack just occurred earlier that week. New Jersey was where he was from, and myself being from Tampa, Florida. But you know what? Like, not to stall this thing, none of us ever expect that we would face something in our life, nor did I what happened to me that day. Before I could put my second foot in the car, he goes to me, "Well, you don't have a bomb strapped to you now, do you?" And I was like, wait. I said, "No, sir." I thought he was joking. I literally thought he was joking. And so I put my foot in. We got in the car. I said, "Sir, we need to get going." And he goes, "You know what? You all should go back to your country." And that time I knew that this man was really serious. What do you guys do in New York? And it was a very lengthy 11-minute conversation or so. A minute or so into it, Carl, I said to myself, "You know what? I need to record this. I really do, because I really didn't feel safe that moment." And as much as I go around the country in my limited capacity and I talk about interfaith and talk about justice and love and unity and togetherness and blah, 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 and democratic socialism with Bernie Sanders type of thing, and it's coming back. Bernie's coming back. Bernie is coming back.
Feel the burn!
I feel the burn already. I felt scared, Carl. I felt really scared. And So I do what I always like doing is start a dialogue. And I said, why would we have to go back to our country, especially if this is our country? He goes, it's not your country. You need to go back to your country. We did it with the Japanese during the Inquisition. And I asked him, how did that work? He goes, it worked well. We saved our country. And we need to save it again from you people, you ISIS people. I said, how could you claim all of us are ISIS? It was around that time, Carl, that I got on Facebook Live and I started streaming this. I couldn't, of course, stick the camera in front of his face type of thing, but I was in the back seat. I had an angle to him, but the camera was faced such that periodically was facing me, the floor, and once or twice near the end of this whole discussion and drive, I faced it towards him. And as soon as I got out, this beautiful mosque, which he stated he lived close by in the area of Boonton. He goes, I live in this area, and I picked up someone at the mosque before. So we kind of got lost for a bit, but when we got to the mosque, yeah, I picked up someone here from here before. And Carl, I don't want to go through the whole conversation, but I told him, if you have fears or reservations, why don't you walk up to a Muslim or walk into a mosque and say, you know what, I'm scared of you guys. I want to know what you guys are all about. That's really the only way we're going to do this. And Carl, it sounds like a broken record because we talk about this over and over and over again, but people don't realize how delicate this matter is. If we don't start speaking to each other, big things are going to happen to each other. And those big things will happen from us due to our ignorance that led to this fear, that led to this hate, that will lead to violence. It doesn't lead to anywhere good. It's going to lead to violence. So the mosque had a big sign, we condone and we condemn terrorism of any types, and this mosque in the center stands unified. I ended my live stream and then I went upstairs and I conducted a half an hour sermon, Carl, on what, and that was how this terrorist didn't represent Islam at all, how he hijacked one of the most greatest calls, the call to prayer, the call of prayer, the first call made to a baby's ear when he or she is born, the last right of a person before they are buried, and that is Allahu Akbar. And I laid out 3 points to empower the community as to how they should go and respond to the greater community that this isn't Islamic at all. Now, Carl, this said and done, fast forward, it's nighttime, the video's gone viral, thousands have looked at it, people are talking about it, and a friend of mine posted and said, did you file a complaint? I said, no, I really didn't want to. Actually, Carl, I tipped him. Actually, I assumed it was 50%, but the ride ended up being close to $13. I tipped him $5. I'm just saying that because I harbor no malice against a person, nor do I have a malicious intent for someone to lose their job because I don't feel comfortable. But he said something very interesting. He said that if you don't file a complaint, then our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, our wives, people go on Lyft on a daily basis. You're a male. If it was a female subject who would feel threatened and not in their zone. Like, I never felt, I'm not saying a female is weaker. I'm sure a sister could defend herself much better than I could. But the thing was, when you don't expect it, Carl, this is what, it brings chill up my spine because I didn't expect this. We talk so much about it. We talk so much about tragedies and calamities, but you never expect it to happen to you. And so that really threw me off. So around 11:30 that night, after I had my dinner, picked up the phone, I called Lyft, and my hand was shaking, my voice was shaking, but I filed a complaint. And just to put it out there, because again, our question to you is simple, everyone. Where do you feel safe in the world today? I want to know. We need to discuss safe zones. And so Lyft took this matter with great level of seriousness. They apologized multiple times. They're willing to work. And by Monday, when I was leaving New York, I got to speak to one of the head officers of Lyft, and we made a semi-agreement based on him researching who I am and what I do with O People Foundation, opeople.foundation. Check out our website, imamazhar.com. Check out the website. He said, we want to work together. And that really is what we want to do. This is not about demonizing a company or demonizing a people or scaring people with lawsuits. It's about fixing our problem. And he said our culture doesn't stand for this, and they've already spoken to the driver, and there's a series of protocols that go in place, an educational program, but we're thinking of doing some type of cultural sensitivity education for drivers of Lyft and for other employees in the general masses, which hopefully will embark upon in the near future, only because we all agreed on the phone that in order for our country and our world to continue forward and prosper, we really need to know each other and respect our differences. So Carl, that's all I wanted to talk about today, was to share this incident as we welcome back our listeners and we thank them for their votes and their dedication and continuous, tuning into this podcast and downloading it and sharing it. I wanted to just put my experience out there. Yes, it's days have passed now from that incident. It's kind of gone quiet and cold, but as we see again this evening, this type of violence is only going to continue. Some will do it in the name of God. Some will do it in the name of a faith. Some will do it in the name of what they profess. Some will do it because they're disgruntled or because they're disappointed or because they're depressed. Doesn't matter why they do it. It's wrong. And you never know. You may be at a place one day when you least expect it, and God forbid you may become a victim of something verbal, something God forbid physical, or something God forbid tragic. And so raw Islam, since Islam is always used, we're not going to let Islam be hijacked. And with that, Carl, I hand the mic back to you.
So I will say from my personal perspective, and I know you and I have talked about this before in the past, that I hate that statement. I hate that statement. Why don't you go back where you came from? For me, especially as a Muslim convert, that is so stupid. And I know you probably obviously handled it way better than I did, but the minute he would have said, why don't you go back where you came from, I would have looked at him and said, yeah, they have better maple syrup there. Because, I mean, you're from Canada, for those that don't know. So for you to go back where you came from means you're going back to Canada. It's people look at people and they assume this person has a beard and he has a shaved mustache and he has a little more I can't think of the word. I want to say melatonin, but I know that's not right because that's the stuff in turkey. But he's got a little bit more in his pigment that makes him a little darker than me. So this is obviously everything is one of the things that I've seen on Twitter a lot is every time somebody who professes the faith of Islam and then does something really dumb, millions of Muslims across the world, not the nation, the world, we all have to go, sorry, we didn't know Jim, didn't hang out with him, wasn't a friend of ours, we're sorry he did that, we'll move on. We denounce his actions. But when you get somebody that is a little lighter and does things that he shouldn't do in the name of another religion, he's sick. He needs help. It wasn't real. It's not about religion. No. And now you and I have an entire episode on the definition of terrorism. How come for it to be terrorism, the dude needs to be brown? Why does it have to be? Why is that the litmus test for terrorism? Because it goes all the way back to how you started.
Yep.
Where are you safe? If you're not safe at a movies, if you're not safe at a concert, if you're not safe going to the mosque, if you're not safe going to your church, somebody has done something to make you feel unsafe which makes you scared, which is the exact definition of terrorism. That is causing terror. So at that, I will say, do you have any final thoughts or final words, sir?
Well, final words, I want to give a shout out to my friend Kamal Saba from Nashville, Tennessee, who posted on his Facebook a few days ago that he wanted to confess for 10 years almost. He turned off all the so-called liberal news and he was totally watching Fox News. And he did it only to get out of his comfort zone to try to understand how people thought differently. He presented his thoughts, but I just want to say, based on that, my experience with the driver was I felt that he was totally brainwashed through an ideology of media, of a certain media outlet, and a series of certain media outlets that continue to drill home their narrative. God gave you all senses. God gave us all a brain. Our brain isn't the TV. It's not a smartphone. It's not the computer. We have our own brains. Confront your fears, create dialogue, reach out to another person, and experience through your senses the reality that is on this world, not the preconceived notion that has been introduced in your mind. And with that, Carl, that's why we have Raw Islam. Listen, you may not like us, you may not like our faith. I don't want anyone to, I'm not here to tell you like my faith or like me. We're talking about real conversations here. Get involved. We want your comments. We want your suggestions. And yes, we want your answer. Where do you feel safe in our world today?
So I think before I do the final closing, I know we've got people watching on Facebook, and I just want to say thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. And I do actually sit here and watch the Facebook feed. So whoever's watching right now, if you guys want to go ahead and comment and tell us where you feel safe, we can throw it up here right now. But yeah, that is a good question, and that is a question that we'll work towards next week's show. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the close of this episode of Raw Islam. The boys are back in town doing this once again, so join us next Tuesday at 8 o'clock, inshallah, for another new episode of Raw Islam with Imam Azhar. I want to thank Imam Azhar for taking time out of his day to join us today. I want to thank all of our listeners for downloading. I saw some really cool numbers on a different website today. I got to talk to you after the show about something. And I want to thank everybody for everything that they do, the votes. Make sure to check out the VEN Network, VENN Network, over on patreon.com to help support this show and other shows like it. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we will say, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.